Hey y'all, Mr. Lapeze here with some thoughts and ideas on getting started on essay number two, much in the way I made a video for essay number one. First thing, let's make sure everybody understands the essay number two assignment guidelines and expectations. I have it here just to make sure I don't mess anything up for y'all. So this essay is 1 page longer, is required to be 1 page longer than essay number one. So this is a 4 full-page limit at minimum. So you should be down to the very bottom of page 4 at minimum. And remember, this essay, like essay number one, does not have a research component. So what you're doing is you're writing on the 3 readings we've been focusing on these past few weeks: Plato, Turkle, and Douglas. And those are the only 3 materials you can quote, paraphrase, or summarize from for this assignment. In other words, everybody's works cited page will be identical if they're done correctly. Everybody will have an entry for Turkle, an entry for Douglas, and an entry for Plato. And that's it, because those are the 3 places you need to borrow material from, and you cannot go outside of those 3 assignments to find material. The other thing to talk about the most, I think, is sort of this unorthodox support the following assertion assignment that I'm giving y'all. I know this is something that many of you have not ever done before, having to support an assertion that you're not even making. But it is beneficial to you, just as sort of a rhetorical exercise, learning how to argue. So what I gave you essentially is the first half of your thesis statement. One of my colleagues, when he's helped students work on this paper when they're in my class, he said, well, you should thank Mr. Lapeze for giving you a thesis statement, because essentially I have. All you need to do is add on to it to make it more specific. So you have to support the assertion that people can never be truly free. And you have to choose 1, 2, and or all 3 of the reasons I give you in the essay prompt: that ignorance, knowledge, or the tools for learning prevent people from being free. And you can choose 1, 2, and or all 3 of those options: ignorance, knowledge, tools for learning, and then explain why. And that should be your thesis statement. So it's completely legitimate to take what I've given you in the support the following assertion prompt and make it fill in the blank, to say something like this as your thesis statement: people can never be truly free. They will always be imprisoned by what they know and what they don't know, because knowledge, blank, and ignorance, blank. And if the more specific those blanks that you fill, once you fill them in, the better. So once you have the essay prompt addressed and you explain why specifically, you have a fine thesis statement. And from there, you can ground all of your body paragraphs in that thesis statement. You can base them and link them to that thesis statement. My suggestion is to do something like that, to make a fill in the blank, at least first. If you're uncomfortable using my prompt for your thesis statement, you can always revise it to make it your own later. You can say yada yada yada, and people and freedom don't mix, or whatever. You can change the wording. But if it were me, I would just make it a fill in the blank and make sure I get those blanks specific, so that the justification for why you're saying people can't be free is clear from the very beginning of your paper. The next thing that's not tricky, but that some people have trouble with in essay number two is connecting the sources. I mean, they're just very different. Frederick Douglass, great abolitionist, historical figure many people are familiar with going into the essay. Plato, way before our lifetime, and philosopher. He's writing an allegory, so a symbolic story, so it's different too. And then Turkle, which seems to some people not even to connect to Douglas and Plato, writing about technology. So how do you forge relationships between those sources to support a thesis about freedom, and technology and knowledge and ignorance? My suggestion is to at least make these connections: Turkle and Douglas. So essentially, they're both texts talking about the tools we use to learn and how those present as obstacles to us. So Douglas, his tools are essentially language, the books and speeches he reads, and then oral language, the alphabet, etc. They liberate him, of course. That seems to be obvious, but they also get in his way. They're obstacles. Um, the two sort of places to focus the most in Douglas, I think, or that first opening paragraph. He says about Mistress Hugh that at first she lacked the depravity for shutting me up in mental darkness. That's Douglas saying that. So when he says shutting me up in mental darkness, essentially he's using the metaphor that we're using, that mental darkness, which is synonymous with ignorance, is something you can be locked in. It's like a cage. Ignorance is like a cage. And by not teaching him, by stopping teaching him, by not teaching him how to read, how to the alphabet, how to access language, they're essentially putting him in a type of mental prison, an intellectual prison. So I would focus on that where he's basically saying what we're writing about. That's paragraph 1. And then I would focus on the distress he comes to feel. Remember, he's driven suicidal once he learns the nuances of slavery, and that there is another option, that he was born into slavery, but he comes to learn that slavery doesn't have to be the way. White people can liberate their slaves. White people can treat their black counterparts with respect, with equal respect. And once he learns that, it drives him to consider killing himself. It makes him envious of his fellow slaves because they don't know what he knows. And ignorance, what he's saying is ignorance can feel good sometimes. Something, all of us can, as human beings, can understand. Sometimes we learn things we wish we didn't learn. We wish we hadn't learned. And it can be sort of a balm. It can be sort of soothing to stay ignorant. And that's where Douglas is. So that's Douglas. And I would forge a relationship between Douglas and Turkle. Turkle, who essentially says we have all of these technological tools at our disposal. We have word processing software. We can create avatars. We can make slides and slideshows and PowerPoint. We have all this stuff, and yet the tools have these drawbacks. Much like the tools for learning, language, books, speeches, etc., have drawbacks for Douglas. So that's the comparison I would make about these tools for learning and how they sort of become obstacles for people, for Douglas, and for anyone who uses technology in Turkle. And then I think the easier relationship to make between texts is between Douglas and Plato. Douglas's journey is quite comparable to the journey of the freed prisoner in Plato's allegory. Not having access to knowledge, being freed from your shackles, for Douglas, the shackles of ignorance, and for the prisoner in Plato, the shackles of ignorance. And then this sort of painful coming to enlightenment, to coming to knowledge. The prisoner has to gradually make his way out, drag himself out of the cave. Eventually he can see by the light of the sun, but it's painful to his eyes at first. In Douglas, you can see the analogy. I mean, Douglas, it pains him to learn about slavery. Eventually it's positive for him, and he learns that it's a good thing to learn, and he comes to appreciate it. But at first, it's quite painful. So that's how I would put Douglas in a direct comparison, much like you did in your weekly writing, a direct comparison with Plato's Free Prisoner. And all of this is to, justify and link to your thesis that people can't be free. Things that keep us from being free are what we learn, what we can't learn and don't know, and the ways by which we learn, the tools we use to learn. Finally, last thing to think about is the tools we use to learn are not just technology, Turkle, books and speeches, Douglas, and language, but there are also other people, teachers, anyone in the media, parents, pastors, church community, just your community of friends. They are also tools for learning. So don't shy away from expanding that tools for learning and how these things can be obstacles to our freedom. Don't just use Turkle's ideas and Douglas's. Use your own ideas to help support your own thesis. So 4 full pages at minimum, no research, 3 sources, Turkle, Douglas, Plato. Basically what you're doing is creating a fill in the blank with the thesis statement that I've started for you. And then remember some of the details about my expectations. So try for perfection when it comes to language mechanics. A final proofread aloud will save you lots of points. Lots of times we hear our mistakes much easier than we can see them if we're just reading quietly. No first person, so no I, me, mine, us, any first person pronouns. And then I would say, if you were unhappy with your essay number 1 grade, get some help. You can email me, of course, but go to the ILC and go to the ILC. Send your paper to the ILC. Make a virtual appointment. Use the Real Center. All of that is in course resources. All of the information. How to contact the ILC and the Real Center. Go out and get some help if you're unhappy with your grade. Don't wait until the last minute. Write something you're unhappy with. Don't get any help, and then do the same thing. Make the same mistakes that you made with essay number 1. Most people, I'll leave you with this, find essay number 2 easier. It's easier to approach. There's more source material. The readings are longer, and there's more readings than essay number 1. And so they find it gratifying in a way. I hope you do. I hope I can help. If you need help, just email me. And don't wait till the last minute, y'all. The earlier you get started, the better your grade will be. That's a guarantee. Enjoy this fall weather. And as always, keep in touch. Let me know what I can do. Bye.